video is about surds and is in response to Sinjana's request from my previous video. So we're going to start by writing 4 times 4, which is 16, and therefore meaning 4 squared is also 16 and the square root of 16 is 4. So because it gave us an integer, which is a whole number with no decimal points after it, it's called a complete square. However, there are numbers like the square root of 10, the square root of 15, etc., which are called ugly surds. This is because if you do put it in your calculator, you're going to see that it gives you a long decimal number. And in an exam question, you just want to keep it in its surd form because it's much more efficient this way and you don't have decimals flying all over the page. Now, putting the square root of 10 in your calculator will give you the number of 3.16227766. And as you can imagine, the surd form of 10 is just much more easy to work with than that long decimal number. Now we're going to move on to rationalizing denominators. Now this basically just means you want to get rid of all the surds in the denominator of a fraction. If you don't already know, the denominator is the bottom part of a fraction and the numerator is the top. This isn't for any specific reason, but it's what mathematicians think is the simplest form to write surdy fractions in. So I've come up with a concept called the different signs. Imagine you're on a number line and you're on positive 5. You want to get rid of the value of a positive 5 and you want to go to 0. So you're going to use the different sign and you're going to use negative 5. Now this is very basic and most people understand, but we're going to use this different sign concept in our surd questions. The first example we're going to do is rationalize 8 over the square root of 3, add 1. Now sometimes the word rationalize might come by itself, and this just means get rid of surds in the denominator. So we're going to try and rationalize this fraction using the opposite sign concept. And remember, in fractions, whatever you do to the top, you must do to the bottom. It's almost like the golden rule. So we're going to times the whole fraction by the square root of 3 minus 1. Now writing it in brackets is completely fine because there's almost like an invisible multiplication sign. Now I'm only going to start by expanding the bottom, the denominator, because afterwards I might be able to simplify and cancel out across the fraction. So I'm going to write it again on the right so I can give myself as much space as possible and make no mistakes. And remember, between the brackets there's almost an invisible multiplication sign. So we're going to draw the arrows from the square root of 3 to the square root of 3. You multiply those together, you get the square root of 3 times 3. Then another arrow, the square root of 3 times minus 1 is minus 1 square root 3. Now the same thing for the 1, multiply it by the whole other bracket. That's going to be plus 1, the square root of 3, and then plus 1 times minus 1 is minus 1. So now that we've expanded, as you can see, now we have to simplify what we have expanded. So if you start by going to the minus 1 square root 3 plus 1 square root 3, that makes 0 because it's the same values but different signs. Now there is no more surds in the denominator and you have rationalized it. Now we're going to move on to the square root, 3 times 3, which is basically the square root of 9, because 3 times 3 is 9, and that's basically 3. So it's just going to be 3 minus 1, because we can't forget the 1, and that's 2. So we write out the fraction again, but now it's much more simple and it's been rationalized. And if you know how to cancel things out, then you should know that you can divide the whole fraction by 2, and the denominator will become 1, and the numerator will become 4. So now we want to write out our simplified answer, and anything over 1 is just divided by 1, so the 1 is no longer necessary. So it's going to be 4 brackets, square root of 3 minus 1. Now we have to multiply the 4 by everything in the bracket using our expanding arrows, and that's going to be 4 square root 3 minus 4. And that's our final answer. I hope that was useful, and if you need help in anything, just write in the comments.